And happy Friday, everyone. Hi, I'm Steve Ferreira, and welcome to Navigate B2B. I'm your host for today's episode, and I'm also CEO of Ocean Audit here in Hartford, Connecticut, a global ocean freight refund recovery consultancy. So glad to be joining you today on a very, very exciting edition of Navigate B2B, and that's my show. How did we get here in this journey? Well, it's really interesting. I think that when you take a navigational approach to life or the direction of the great entrepreneurs and professional men and women out there fighting Containergeddon, navigating is what it's all about today. And there's so many people that do it so well. And we're going to get into who is the most underpaid person in logistics that's doing it so well. We're going to talk about that really, really soon. But before we get started, hot off the press, not that it really matters, but the Shanghai Container Freight Index, she held her own this week. We have about a $50 decrease on East Coast and West Coast rates. But as you guys know, or you may not know, the Shanghai Container Freight Index is really kind of a bogus cheat sheet, rate guide towards what's really happening in the Trans-Pacific. The reality is that rates of $5,000, $6,000, and $7,000 are abounding in the trade. And when you also look at the critical lanes from, say, Asia to Europe, we used to have a saying back in the 80s when I was at Sealand that, wouldn't it be nice if the ocean freight could be 10% or 20% of the value of the cargo? Well, in some cases, it's hitting that, and we're starting to see actually a withdrawal of imports in some smaller, lower valued items out of Asia to Europe for the purposes that if you have a container load of souvenirs going to Prague or Hamburg, and those little bells with Hamburg or Prague written on it, and I know that because I live there. The value of those goods might be $30,000, and the ocean freight is $12,000. So really, really, really interesting that the ocean freight rates have risen to such a large extent that they have impacted the importer's ability to actually even have those shipments go forward. The shipments are being canceled out. And I think it's really interesting when you look at that dynamic, that global dynamic that's happening in trades all around the world. One of the things that's really interesting right now in the Trans-Pacific is that, somebody made the comment, I think it was Zenetta or one of the ocean freight benchmarking companies that said ocean freight rates would be 150% higher than last year. And to me, it's almost like, what's the big deal, right? It's you're going from a $1,200 rate to the West Coast to a $2,700 rate to the West Coast when you negotiate your new contracts. But only the biggest of the big will get those, of course. And again, those will be tightly coordinated, with stop losses in terms of where those rates and how much quantity of containers those folks can use at those new rates. So it's really interesting, all the dynamics that are happening right now in the Trans-Pacific. Certainly a lot of interesting topics around Chinese New Year. One of the things that we found is that certainly some factories will be working to, help the backlog of goods and orders. So we've got a whole bunch of different unique opportunities that are taking place around the world. But anyway, back to one of the features of the show today. And again, you're watching Navigate B2B. I'm your host, Steve Ferreira, CEO of Ocean Audit. So I put together, I was thinking about all the great clients that I have at Ocean Audit and all the clients that, are in queue to work with me. And I look at these men and women as the frontline soldiers in the world of getting our goods to us, right, from Asia or wherever. And so I asked myself the question, who's the most underpaid person in logistics? And the answer is, the person is, well, it's not one person. It's really the logistics manager, it's the traffic manager, the input analyst, the compliance director, the supply chain manager, the logistics director. Basically, the most underpaid person in logistics are the 10,000 of you that are out there, field generals, each and every one of you. And I know being the heroes of these billion-dollar corporations, you don't always get the immediate recognition. But to me, you are on the front line of Containergeddon, this phenomena we're going through. And without you, trillions of dollars in revenue movements would never occur. And I want to fix a little part of that about your being underpaid and being such the field generals and generalettes that you are. That's a new word. I think from the standpoint of giving back to all you guys in terms of what you mean, not only to me, but to all your corporations, you're all working diligently to serve us, to get us the big screen TVs, to get us the Pelotons, the exercise bikes, to get us all the goods that we need. Without you, the velocity of our supply chain would be in the abyss. I know budgets are tight today, and you guys don't get the perks of going to special events and congresses or conferences or maritime shows because you make a request and it's like $700 or $600, and only so many people from your company can go. Well, we're giving a $5 million bonus to all of you today. And the reason why I say that is that we are going to have at FreightWaves Global Supply Chain Week with a Maritime Congress component or Maritime Symposium. It's the end of February and running into the early part of March. And we'd like to offer it to our 10,000 logistics men and women and professionals out there, 100% complimentary. This is really a $500 value times however many of you guys sign up. So we'd like to give that money back to you. We'd like to make you a better person in your role. We'd like to increase your education. We'd like to get you up to speed with some of the latest and greatest techniques, and not only supply chain and logistics and maritime, but also things like influencer marketing, LinkedIn marketing. We're going to have a guest today that'll talk about the claims and the recovery process in cargo claims. Really world-class experts that will help you help deliver you content that will shape and make you the leaders of today, tomorrow that you are, and to give you the content that you need to help you navigate this crazy B2B environment that you're being so much a part of, and how much respect we have for you. So the offer is basically look at Global Supply Chain Week on FreightWaves website, sign up, and right now we're putting together the complete agenda. We have, I can't reveal yet who it is, but we have definitely one of the most sought after keynotes in America that will probably be gracing our virtual stage. We will have great interviews with the people that mean the most to you, your peers, the BCOs of the world, other leaders in other components of the maritime industry. I'll be sitting in some of those fireside chats and helping you and guiding you through those interviews. And so we want to contribute that. We want to give that back to you. And so you, as the most underpaid people or persons in logistics, deserve the ability to learn, laugh, share, and enrich yourself with the content that really is cutting edge for 2021. And this way, your bosses can't say, hey, well, Sally, hey, Jim, hey, Roger, we don't have a budget for that. So great news. And I think you should all take advantage of that. We can accommodate tons of you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to message me, and we'll get you all. Everyone will go to FreightWaves Global Supply Chain Week and sign up there. As I said, we're getting all the world-class speakers lined up, and it should be an incredible event. Speaking of incredible events, when we start to talk about, and I hope to see you all there, and we think it's going to be a heck of a show. Speaking of really unique events, one of the things that's been happening far too often in the last couple of weeks are maritime incidents in the Trans-Pacific, containers going overboard. We helped contribute yesterday some breaking news along with one of my great new friends and connections, Mary McNally of Crocs and a bunch of other folks. And we're talking about the episode that happened with the Maersk Essen. And I'd like to show you a little bit about the Maersk Essen. She had lost over some 750 containers in the Trans-Pacific on the journey from Xiamen to LA. And all indications are that she was had some damage and some stack damage. You know, most of these ships are what we call fully cellular, right? So that means that there's guides which hold in the bottom tiers of the containers, but upper tier containers do get impacted by the elements depending on how they're lashed, which is these wireframe ropes that hold the containers down. So the Maersk Essen suffered some substantial cargo loss, perhaps, and again, just speculation, perhaps some internal structural damage. And so Maersk made the decision to divert the vessel from LA, which is a very smart move considering the extreme congestion of 30, 35 ships in that port right now. Any ship in there that is has been impacted by something like the Maersk Essen would be paramount to committing suicide in that port, because that port just cannot withstand any more pressure, and to have a ship that has some damage to it. So Maersk is floating the vessel or sailing the vessel on its own power to Lázaro Cárdenas in Mexico. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's a port or a facility that Maersk owns. So that's kind of the good news, is that that facility will have the ability to, from a cost perspective, Maersk will be doing what they can, obviously. But there are are a whole host of other issues that centered around claims and recoveries, and I'm sure the legal fights that have already begun in boardrooms will continue on. And this is also as a result of the more recent incident with the One Network Express APIS voyage, which required a maritime dockside cranes, floating cranes to help unload. So when we talk about this, I think it gives a great pleasure to springboard into talking and introducing to my guest today. And she is the founder of Recoupex in Geneva, Switzerland. And I'd like to introduce Lena Yazutini to the show today. Lena, welcome to Navigate B2B. It's so great to have you. And as I said, Lena is coming direct to us from Geneva. Lena is a well-known former maritime counsel for one of the largest maritime companies in the world. And she is a sought-after consultant in cargo claims, recovery and collection aspects by importers, exporters, and insurance agents around the world. Lena, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about Recoupex and exactly what you do.
Thank you so much, Steve. Recoupex is an on-demand global cargo claims recovery accelerator. So we help shippers, exporters, importers, freight forwarders, and even marine insurers to recoup cargo damages from the liable parties globally. And we do this by using technology and global network of lawyers. So the problem what we are fighting at Recoupex is all the complexity which comes into obtaining compensation for the damage fast.
Well, that's really a great intro. And how does Recoupex fit in the space between, obviously, I may be wrong, you're not an insurer, you don't sell insurance, but you basically work with the insurance and all benefactors of the cargo to achieve a recovery. Do I have that correct?
Yes, correct.
That's really great. And can you tell us, Lena, what are some of we'll get into the APIS and the Maersk Essen speculation in a little bit. That's always the juicy part I love. And so, by the way, if you're just joining us, you're watching Navigate B2B. I'm your host, Steve Ferreira, and you have just joined me as I introduce my guest in Geneva, Switzerland, Lena Yazutini, CEO and founder of Recoupex. Lena, tell us about the nature of cargo claims that most shippers encounter, and what are the general ones that they have, and how do they in 9 out of 10 times, how do they approach claims traditionally?
Right. So everything we see around us was likely shipped by sea. And yet, if you tried to obtain compensation from the liable party when your cargo is damaged in transit, all parties can confirm it is a nightmare. So indeed, cargo claims have gotten really bad name in industry. And it's one of the very few parts of supply chain which has been heavily neglected by the shippers globally. And here I am speaking about small-size shippers, medium, and even large organizations. And the way why cargo claims have been neglected for decades is because of the time involved to pursue cargo claim, because of a lack of specific legal knowledge at the organization, for employees to be able to wrestle with legal departments of the carriers, and because of common misbelief. Why should I claim my damages from the shipping line if they never pay me? Some misbelievers are that insurance can solve all my problems. Another misbeliefs are that shipping line can blacklist me if I claim damages. So which led to the situation we had pre-COVID, that majority of the shippers globally, small, medium value claims, they just absorbed as an economic to pursue. Yes, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I mean, I'm flabbergasted to hear that, but in a way, our businesses are not so dissimilar, because I was listening to you with rapt interest, and I thought to myself, it's interesting. Sometimes it sounds a little bit like what I do at Ocean Audit. Like, yes, if I have a client that has, a $10,000 overcharge, they may say that seems to them more trouble than it's worth to accelerate that, right? So they let it slide. And then I come along and I do it for them seamlessly. It sounds like it's almost the same thing that you're doing, where, yeah. And so can I just ask you a question? Would you know, I think in ocean freight, refunds and overcharges is probably $5 billion that goes unclaimed. Do you have any idea amount of how much cargo claims would go unclaimed? Just a guess?
Well, we have two numbers. First number is that 90% of all claims submitted to the shipping lines are pushed into time bar, right? So it means cargo interest receives zero, right? And another number which we have is that 80% of all claims submitted to the shipping lines annually is smaller, medium value claims. So everything below 50,000. Right? So you can imagine the scope of the losses which falls on the shoulders of the cargo interest.
Well, Lena, let's slice this a little better so my audience can understand. Are you when you talk about approaching the ocean vendors for a claim? Now, what if the importer has maritime or marine insurance? What's the first step that they do? Is when they have a loss, I would think that they would pick up the phone and call the marine insurance. Is that the right thing to do?
It's the right thing to do if you have insurance. But again, to have insurance or not to have insurance, it really depends on your business case. And here I want to demystify to your audience. Sometimes it's just too expensive to have insurance. If you are shipping potatoes, let's say, right, or onions, it's considered cheap commodity, and insurance which is sold in the market is just too expensive for you to bear, right? So in majority of the cases, you don't have insurance. The ones who have insurance, what happens is that there is always insurance deductible, or most of the time there is insurance deductible. So if you are in a business on a regular basis and you suffer damages, means you have to absorb amounts below deductible and you pay insurance premium. And what is worst, at the end of the year, you have increase of your insurance premium because of your bad loss ratio. Right?
I had no idea about that. That's interesting. Hey, Lena, but would you say, I always like to kind of look at it from a perspective that my importer clients or a client that's online right now watching us can understand. So let's take a vessel, right? Let's just pick a random vessel. It has 10,000 TEUs on it. Do you have any guess? And again, I know I'm catching you off guard on here, but out of the 10,000 containers, what percentage of that do you think would be uninsured?
60.
Really?
Really, it's industry number.
60% uninsured. So that means that if the 6,000 TEUs on that container are damaged, the product's damaged, the only fallback the client has is directly with the bill of lading issuer, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now let's talk, as we say here in America, brass tacks, right? So one of the things I always struggled with as a young salesman in selling cargo services when I was at U.S. Lines and Sealand is here in the States we have I guess it's a congressional act, the Carriage of Goods by Sea Act, which states that the compensation that somebody can get is $500. But the part that's confusing to me is it's per package. So does that mean per carton, per unit, per container? And how can, I think one of the most important takeaways today, what can importers do to make sure that they're getting the maximum compensation? And does the $500 rule even apply? Can it be more?
Yes, indeed. It's a very relevant question, in particular now, Steve. So indeed, there is a $500 package limitation. What importers can do now is at the time they make a booking, they have to enumerate the smallest packages possible in which the cargo is packed. So instead of enumerating one pallet on the bill of lading cargo description, you should state 3,000 boxes of shoes. Instead of stating 10 crates, you should state 11,000 parcels or pieces, right? So the smallest quantities possible. Then you legally ditch package limitation.
Wow, wow. And how can, what's your advice for clients to get in the habit of doing that? Because a lot of these shipping orders and a lot of these practicum, they've been kind of cast in stone of importers doing the same thing for years. What would you come into a client and they have some claims and you help them? What would be the first thing you advise them to do? I mean, you would say, okay, where's your paperwork that shows, or here's what your paperwork should show. What do you try to do to educate your clients? Do you give them a master sheet that shows how to do this?
Yes, I approach very simple thing, nothing dramatic, and the tips that I will share with your audience now doesn't cost anything. So first of all, I say collect evidence, right? Today, everybody has an iPhone. Make pictures at the time of loading of the cargo and at the time of discharge. Prove that container was not proper, that there was a hole in the container, that there was poor rubber gaskets. You have to show how exactly your cargo got damaged, right? Or on the other side, you have to show that you properly loaded as a shipper cargo at the port of load, right? So first and foremost is collecting evidence, photographic evidence and videos. Everything can be done with the smartphones, right? Second thing is, which I'm very strong on, is following up. When you have a claim or you have an issue or unrecovered invoice with a shipping line, make sure your team follows up properly and in the meaningful way. Don't send random reminders, begging, or nasty emails. Ask always, I submitted package invoice, what other document you need to submit? Always follow through until your claim is settled. And the third one is, I really encourage buyers and sellers to cooperate more on the loss prevention side. So if you are a buyer in United States, reach out to your seller and ask, how exactly do they load a cargo? If I am buying tiles, maybe I can share good practices with my seller, how to stuff properly this cargo inside of container to ensure that seller's part is done properly. And when the cargo damage, shipping line will not be able to dispute this.
Lena, it's really interesting as we start to head into like the RFQ season, right, for ocean freight, although it's going to look much different this year than others. One of the things that I try to do with my recovery audit service for ocean freight is I typically look at a master contact list. Okay, here's the global account manager at, and I'm just picking on Maersk, for example. Here's the vice president of pricing. What about including the director of claims? I would think that you'd always want to have the right roster so that you can make your claim to the right person most expeditiously. What's your thoughts on that?
The problem is that claims have been always neglected by the shippers. So most of the time, claims are being handled by import managers, sometimes by logistic managers. We found cases where a human resource manager handles claims. So
Right.
it's very hard, but it is important to have somebody dedicated in organization, or at least a little bit more educated, to handle claims, to respond on them, to follow up with the shipping lines in a more meaningful way.
You know, and you just hit the nail on the head too. Our businesses are very similar now that I'm learning more about your business, because I think one of the problems is that, you know, like in my case, I've never felt that freight audit, right, should be part of a logistics manager's job description. I just simply don't think that's the right thing. And it's just, you made a really interesting point that a maritime cargo claim could be handled by somebody maybe as an administrative assistant, maybe it's a college temp, maybe it's an HR person, but these folks don't necessarily have all the background and knowledge of how to process that. And so I imagine that's where, you know, you're able to help fill a void. But I guess my question is, what about from the ocean vendor side now? I mean, you know, I picture all people on the ocean carrier side, you know, still working from their homes, they're in lockdown. How much more difficult is it? And the reason why I'm asking this question is, you know, to get cargo from, say, Shanghai to LA, you know, last year it might have taken 4 weeks. This year it's taking 9 weeks. And that's just transit time and getting cargo delivered. How has COVID impacted the claims process in terms of its length, its duration, and even its ability to get the client the proper answer?
Yes, so to start with, COVID has been a ticking insolvency bomb and for shippers globally. And what we noticed happening is that shippers started to look for ways to cover their operational costs. And cargo claims were the first area where shippers started to tap into to receive losses for cargo damaged, even before COVID, when volumes were at spike. So we have seen an increase in cargo claims submitted by the shippers globally. What we have seen also very interesting as a trend, we notice increase in other claims, such as demurrage claims. Shippers are claiming now maintenance and repair invoices back. They are claiming as well unexpected fees they receive from the shipping line. So they are much more proactive. And the trend of 2021 is that every penny counts and shippers get more confidence to pursue recoveries because it becomes important for them.
You know, I think you hit so many really interesting spots in that last 30 seconds. And I think that definitely every penny counts, and that's the theme for next year or this year. I also think that, you know, folks like yourself and myself in our respective spaces are much needed experts because, you know, I think all the professionals that you just said are trying to do these tasks, they're overwhelmed. And I think that as we start to head into 2021, they need the resources, and the Global Maritime Conference and Supply Chain Conference that we have coming up will help give them some resources. Lena, I know you'll be there. I know I'll be there. Lena, how can our audience reach out to you?
You can reach us out on Recoupex, www.recoupex.com.
Wow. And also connect with Lena on LinkedIn as well.
Yes.
You know, I want to say to my audience, this has just been an excellent show. I'm glad to have you all join us. I'm Steve Ferreira. You've been watching myself and Lena Yazutine. Thank you so much and have a great weekend. All of us from Navigate B2B, have a great day. Bye-bye. Thanks, Lena.
Bye.